On today's podcast episode, I interviewed Bill Eggertson. He's an expert in renewable energy. He previously retrofitted a home to be one of Canada's top 20 most energy efficient homes, which we're going to dive a little bit into how he did that and what you can even do in your own home. He had the honor of being one of the torchbearers at the 2010 Winter Olympic Games. We're going to take a look at how that experience changed the way he approached life and his career, but there's a lot to dive into, so let's get started. Had such an interesting career, and I'm curious, was there a moment or a key influence maybe from your parents or someone else that sparked your passion for the work you're doing now?
I never had one of those light bulb moments. I do remember my father, we lived in the country. My father had a really weird way of, we would collect all the tin cans that we used, we would clean them out, take off the labels, cut off the ends, crush them down, and then drive them to a recycling plant, because this is 60 years ago before recycling became norm. And I remember thinking, that's the right thing to do, but my God, how much time are we doing this? And if we're the only people in the town that are doing it, But it did orient me to the fact that we have to take care of the planet on which we live. We have to tread lightly, blah, blah, blah. So I did grow up in a bit of an environmentalist environment. And I guess the other light bulb, semi-light bulb, LED light bulb, as I like to call them, was I worked for a number of years for what I would have to call a right-wing organization, the Canadian Chamber of Commerce. And I was manager of policy, and I started to get a bit concerned with some of the views that let's just dig oil and basically no controls on environmental emissions. And this was just the beginning of when the world was starting to think, maybe something's going on here.
Okay, so there's all different pieces, and I guess at like what age maybe did you kind of see yourself going down the path of just full-time supporting the work that you do right now?
I'd say I was probably about 30. And it was a career decision. I decided that although you can make an awful lot of money working for the man, so to speak, it wasn't as fulfilling as I wanted it to be. And an opportunity came up. The long story here is this is where I got into renewables. Stephen Harper canceled all energy research in Canada, and the Solar Energy Society went bankrupt, so to speak. I mean, they were reliant on government funding, so they had to cut back. They hired me, and it was a transition to, should we get out of this? And it was an opportunity to say, no, I mean, people care. We do need renewable energies, wind and solar. I mean, I got in before solar photovoltaics were around. In the days when I started, solar meant solar domestic hot water, which with the large tin cans that you put up, heated the water for your swimming pool. That was solar. And the wind turbines were the old chunky ones that they had in Holland for pumping water. Yeah, so it was just the start of the sexiness of the technology and photovoltaics and becoming actual contributors to the energy supply stuff. And it was also good for the environment because they didn't emit any at point of production.
Was there ever like a moment when you weren't sure if you were on the right path? I guess for some of the listeners of the podcast, they might not know exactly what they want to do with their careers and they're kind of questioning it. But what would you tell them, I guess, as advice?
Was there ever a moment when I had doubts? Probably no more than once a week. Again, you get very discouraged with the pushback, and that's happening now, where certain people are saying, renewables don't work. I won't mention any names, but certain people say that those technologies don't work. There isn't any climate change. It's all fake news, whatever. And you're fighting against that, and those people happen to be in positions of power or governance or regulatory approval. Yeah, you start to think, oh my God, why do I bother? Let's just go back to the cave and spend out the rest of my days. But that's part of the problem with environmentalists is they tend to be committed to the cause, and you have to keep hitting your head against the wall. But ultimately, either your head breaks or the wall breaks.
So it seems as though there's a theme of basically not giving up. If you're going to pursue a route, don't expect change to happen overnight. But I guess throughout your life, how would you say you stayed motivated when you felt like progress was really slow, and when things were starting to get tough?
Nothing in life is easy, and saving the planet is not easy. It requires commitment, and you have to stay committed to the goal, the cause.
So just basically have that like North Star that you're focused on and
Very much.
continue your vision. Okay. Um, and you've taken a lot of big steps towards sustainability, like retrofitting your home to be one of the top 20 most efficient homes in Canada. What made you decide to take on such a big project? And do you think it's important for entrepreneurs, for just innovators, creators to leave a lasting impact beyond just kind of business success?
The introduction, the last house that we lived in, we moved from downtown Ottawa out to the country. So it was in a rural area, very large house, 3,700 square feet, land property, no neighbors. It was what my wife and I wanted at the time. The house was well built. Little things like it was double wall construction. So I won't explain what double wall is, but it was twice as much insulation as a normal house. It was absolutely south facing. It had an absolutely beautiful roof for solar inclination. Um, and so we changed the windows. I mean, literally took out the old windows, put in triple pane, double low E krypton gas filled glass windows, and punched out a whole lot because we were on a river. So guess what we wanted to see was the water. But our glass windows were more energy efficient than most people's walls. Yeah, and windows are where you normally leak. So it was a nice thing. It was the good thing to do. It was, yeah, a nice thing to do. I was involved with ground source heat pumps, so I rented a backhoe and dug a large trench and installed because it was propane heated when we moved in. Installed a heat pump that was absolutely revolutionary, and it was a lot lower cost than normal people because I did most of the work myself. I knew how to do it. It had to be certified, it had to comply with the various things. But just the ability to do something that was unique and innovative and energy efficient to say this is possible. Now, the second part of your question, what should other people do? Well, if you're living in a downtown apartment, that's not really something you can do. So a lot of my lobbying, most of my career has been on municipal officials to say, hey, since it's very, very low cost to install a ground source heat pump in a new subdivision where you've got backhoes on site and no grass and no trees, whatever, and you dig a trench for the pipe to go in, and all of these houses are on a district heating loop, and therefore you don't need natural gas. You are reducing your electricity costs by three quarters, and everybody is okay. This is a good thing to do, trying to get regulators to understand that they need to do the good thing for the people who don't really have the ability, the way I did at my house. Renters, for instance, can't go out and put in a ground source heat pump. You're not allowed to do that for some strange reason. Downtown Toronto, it's a difficult thing to do. So government has to, that's the role of government in my mind, is, and regulators, you take care of the people. We know there's an energy crisis, we know there's an environmental crisis, we know there's a housing crisis. Hey, I've got an idea. Why don't we do all three, address all three challenges at the same time, lower the cost, increase the comfort, and have less impact on the planet? So there are things that people can do. And yes, I mean, do you have incandescent lights anywhere in your house or your apartment? They should be LED because they are lower demand. You save money, the utility saves electricity. Are you using electricity in peak period? You shouldn't, as much as possible. If you've got an electric vehicle, I always argue EVs should not be allowed to charge a car between 7 a.m. and 9 a.m. and 5 p.m., 7 p.m. That is peak period. If you're charging electric vehicles in those two-hour slots, you're peaking the grid. We're having to burn more natural gas to generate the electricity to do your car. Your car should be charged overnight, assuming this is possible. So we have to think through the things that normal people can do that don't have the resources or the power versus what the people who can dig their own ground source and install their own windows could do. It's a bifurcated approach, but it has to be a holistic approach too.
Yeah, that's important, I guess, for people who don't have even just like the money to do like major upgrades, but they can still make a difference by just switching their lights. I think that's really important. Now there's a bunch of tech sensing if you're in the room and the lights
Mhm.
turn on or off. So
Yeah,
there's, yeah, even like so many different ways that tech has made it easier to make these kind of impacts. So I think that's really good for people to
yeah,
hear.
yeah.
And yeah, you've gone a lot through your career, switched some industries, but would you tell your younger self to like grow even faster? Do you think, I guess there's a lot of pressure on younger people. It's like try to know where you're at and try to make a huge difference. But um, you've experienced some years of life, and would you say to somebody younger, like take it easier on yourself and don't have too much pressure and just kind of stick with the North Star, or what's your approach to that?
I think, yes, to your point, Brooke, it's an individual approach. Some people are keeners and want to, save the planet. Other people are more laid back, and I'm going to get around to it after I watch the Super Bowl or whatever. I mean, everybody goes at their own pace. Everybody should be aware of the fact that there is a looming crisis, and we all need to be in this bag together. And therefore, if you can push, go for it. So I would never encourage people to lay back and, ah, you know, you will make mistakes as you proceed along your path, but at least you are trying to proceed along a path. It's like fitness. Yeah, you might hurt your wrist one day lifting up weights, but at least you're doing something to, you know, do good for your body. Food, your diet, you try to do the right diet. You try to do I think every human being, if they are actually humans, try to do the right things. So what is the right thing and how do you do it? A couple of secondary questions, but you do need that North Star that you're talking about. I need to be physically fit. I need to be well fed. I need to be well rested. I need to save the planet. There are quite a few foci that we need to focus on. How you divide your attention based on your skill set between those things, a different thing. But you have to try.
Basically have like the mindset to just improve, even if it's anywhere in life, any category. Yeah,
If you have an attitude that, oh, I don't really care about improving, I've got a problem with you. You have to want to improve.
right. And I think that's important as well because like all the mentors that you're speaking about, your parents, like you can't force somebody to want to improve. They kind of
Mm.
have to have it modeled or have it seen. So I think yeah, it's really important to just be also just surrounded by good people,
Yeah.
and um, yeah, be influenced by them, which is important. And you've always had to stay on top of trends and you're always up to date with news, articles. How do you keep learning and growing while you age, both professionally, personally, and any tips for others who want to keep evolving in their life, in their career?
It unfortunately involves far too much scrolling. Yeah, but again, even there, if you're scrolling, X% of the news that you get from the scroll is correct and accurate, and the other is BS and actually damaging. The more expert you become in it, the more you can read. Well, they're BSing me there. Oh, and that's false. Because the journalist, and I've been a journalist, so I know how easy it is to make mistakes. And the job of a journalist is not to make mistakes. But you've now gone from professional journalism, where there were standards, to social media people who I won't criticize social media because it's wonderful, but hey, this pen can save the world. And if I have a whole lot of followers, they're going to believe my pen will save the world. Well, no, it won't save the world, twit. So you have to discriminate between the real stuff and the bad stuff and the stuff that you don't know. So I will have to do more scientific research of that to go forward. Friends, yeah, you hang around with like-minded geeks and you're bound to come up with other ideas about how to make things better, how to sell, all of the various associations and fora that you get involved with. Well, I had to tell my neighbor how to do this. How'd you do it? Because if it works with your neighbor, maybe it'll work with my neighbor. Sharing of ideas, sharing of knowledge is always there, as well as, and then I put a window in the hole in my house, and you know what? I didn't get the draft coming in. You're kidding. That's really a neat idea. Let's fill in the holes in your house. So there are quite a few sources of information. You have to be vigilant on getting the true sources of information, and that's a real problem these days. But that is again the human element. We are curious. We want to know, I hope, and we want to know the truth.
And you worked in a field where the impact goes beyond just making money. I saw that you worked for quite a lot of nonprofits. How do you think entrepreneurs, innovators should think about success, and should we focus more on like long-term impact and sustainability instead of immediate profit up front?
That is an inherent problem that we've got is that the job of a company is to make money so that, pensions and investments and whatever jobs can be created. So there is a need for companies to be full steam ahead, and if that means tar sands exploitation, whatever, that is helpful in some cases, but you hope that at some point the consumers of that product shame or stop using the bad company, stop using something that is I don't want to use any examples because then I get sued by the company. But if it's a bad product, why are we using it even though it makes money and creates jobs? We have to be aware of the armaments. Yeah, I guess somebody needs to make tanks, and that would be a nice thing, but wouldn't it be nice if we didn't need the tanks? And I'm dreaming in Technicolor there. So business has to learn that people care, but their first and primary occupation or incentive is they must make money. That's what their shareholders demand. How they make money, you hope that it's within the parameters of legality, and you hope that it's within the parameters of ethical decisions. But you know, only the end use consumer or the regulator can dictate what a company should do.
What advice would you have for somebody who wants to make, I guess, a real difference, but maybe they're in a position where the first opportunity they get might not be one that is going to make a difference? What, I guess, would you do in their position? Would you still go ahead just because the situation, or would you just keep pushing through until there's like an opportunity to make that difference?
Again, every person is unique, that if you've got a family of 17 that you have to make put food on the table for, I mean, you can only afford to gamble so much, and you have to be prepared to back off because keeping your family fed is important. If you've got more flexibility and tolerance for irritation and depression, and you still believe the planet should be saved, if you think that you've got a skill set, of forte in that would help the planet, then go for it. But yeah, everything is unique and dependent on all sorts of variables. So I would, this is why they have career counselors and psychologists. I try to avoid getting into that because I'd have to do an awful lot of research into what is it you want to do, Brooke, and how do you want to do it, and how much risk are you willing to take, and how destitute can you be for how long? That will determine it. But that's very much up to you to decide how many times do you hit your head against the wall.
Exactly. Yeah, it's very person dependent, situation dependent, which um, I'm starting to see and realize over the years. Uh, and being,
Do not get discouraged. Do not get discouraged, though.
I guess hope is really important.
Very, very.
Being hopeful is for sure what has gotten me through difficult times, like selecting different career options and such. Um, and I guess there was something that happened in 2010. You were selected as torchbearer, which is quite interesting. I guess maybe to start, maybe talk a little bit about the experience, because I personally haven't spoken to a person who has gotten that opportunity before. So how was that like?
The games were in Vancouver, and so they brought the torch in from, I guess it comes in from Greece, so it landed somewhere on the East Coast, and they asked people to apply with some blurb. Why do you think that you're important enough to get a route on this path? So I'm going to guess, it must have been a few hundred people, so I was not the only one, but they were selected on the basis of the argument that you put in, why you think you're important. So it landed in, I'm going to say Halifax, and I think I went for, it was about a kilometer distance. And, so the torch came up, and the person passed it off to me, and we made a joke, and RCMP are surrounding us. And, because there was even in those days, there was the fear of what might happen. So I got to run for a kilometer at slow speed, and, the route was cheering. So, I mean, it was an ego trip beyond belief. I mean, wow, it was really kind of mind blowing because people are focusing on me Now, those people wouldn't necessarily know what my story was unless you went to the who along in my neighborhood were picked for this. Oh, Bill Eggertson, he did, blah, 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 and you would learn something about the people. But most people came out because they wanted to see the torch. They wanted to be part of history. And I got to be part of history as the center shot. So yeah, for a kilometer, I was just, yeah. It was an ego trip. Let's put it that way. It was lovely.
How do you think that experience influenced how you approached your work in life after that happened?
Well, I'm hoping that anybody who gets heavily committed in anything gets that type of ego reinforcement. I mean, yes, I've received awards as you almost, if you don't ever get acknowledged as being good or acceptable or slightly above absolutely useless, I would think you'd get discouraged after a while. So I mean, it helped. It was nice. It had nothing to do with my field of endeavor, and it didn't allow me to sell more renewable energy. It was a pat on the back for Bill because I think it was Coca-Cola was the sponsor of this. So Coke said, somehow the for easy math, 1,000 runners. These are 1,000 people out of however many thousands of applications they would have received. It was nice to be recognized, and they would have done it. Somebody was a great chef. Somebody cut their hedge, correctly and kept it level for. I mean, I don't know the basis on which other people were chosen. I didn't do that much research and can't remember that much, but it was again very. It's nice to occasionally have somebody above you or beside you or even below you say, Bill, what you're doing is really good. Congratulations and keep going. That provides the incentive to keep hitting your head against the wall.
So I guess it ties back a little bit, I think, to one of the questions, the very first ones I asked, like what kept you going when, you had times of doubt. So I even see that in like companies, like everyone's saying how employee recognition is so important to actually keep and retain the employees. And it's so sad to see how many organizations these days they don't do that anymore. And some of like the roles at least I've been in, it's very few moments where recognition takes place, which I feel like if it happened more, the employees would get so much more encouraged to keep up the good work that they're doing. So I think maybe companies should think a little bit more about that part for sure, just to even grow business, like investing in your employees first. I can see that how that relates to that aspect.
The one downside of that is if you're in a large company and there's 10 people in your section and one of you is going to get an award. If he gets it, I actually deserved it. The employer has to be very careful how to not upset me by giving it to him because my perception is I'm better than him. Why the heck did he get it? I'm quitting this stupid company because they're dumb. Now, am I a better employee? That becomes an HR issue. But yes, so to give an award, you are upsetting the people who apply for or are eligible for and don't get. So it's a tricky thing that, again, not my field of endeavor, but I totally agree with you that people need to, if they're doing the right job, it shouldn't be mindless flattery. Oh my God, you're doing such a good job. And you're not, but I want to keep you on board because it's too much work to hire a replacement for you. Yeah, it has to be deserved and worthy of that recognition.
Right, with like backup proof or with something to say, right, to
Yeah, yeah,
explain why
yeah,
specifically.
yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Um, and I guess just talking about maybe some of the work that you see coming in the future, if there is any work, maybe speak about that and what we can look forward to in the next few years that you have planned so far.
Okay, thank you very much. That is the segue into Net Zero Plus Canada. And it's an association that has been set up to achieve three goals. And what we're doing is lobbying everybody from regulators and industry and politicians as well as consumers. The first goal is let's all call energy by the same terminology. So, million tons of oil, British thermal units, barrels of oil, tons of cooling load. I mean, I can go on and calories I can go on forever. There are all energy measurements. Since nobody knows what the frig energy is, why don't we call it kilowatt, kilowatt hour? So that at least we're all speaking the same language so that your gas furnace, instead of being X BTU rated or your ground source heat pump, X ton of cooling load rated, why don't we call it the way they do with solar and wind turbines, X kilowatts? And it puts out X kilowatt hours of energy from the source. Then I can compare. Should I put in that or that? What's the cost? I need this much energy. If it's comparable, then I pick you or you, but not you. The second phase is learn where the energy slash emissions are coming from. And this is key. I mentioned before that 83% of the energy and 86% of the carbon from your household, and this is an average household, which is Mar-a-Lago as well as a small little 200 square foot apartment, is I can't remember the number, but roughly 2,000 kilograms per year comes from heating your household. So pay attention to what is important, over which you have to have control. And then the third one, it's a little bit unique to ground source heat pumps. The ground source industry says, oh, we transfer heat. No, you don't transfer heat. It goes through the most complex phase change material of a compressor with so much electromechanical inputs. It's called production. And you produce on average 20,000 kilowatt hours per year per household in Canada. You need 6,000 to operate the equipment. So you're producing 20,000, you're consuming 6 just simply to run the compressor, and the national average of 4,000 lights and appliances, producing 20, consuming 10. 20,000, 10,000. You know, the standard definition of net zero is must produce as much as I consume. So let's see what happens if you produce twice as much as you consume. It's called net zero plus. That was where the name for the association came from. And that is my crusade over the next period of time, is lobbying government, prorogued right now, but getting the industry to understand this. We're dealing with the European industry. If we can just get the industry to understand that they don't transfer, they produce, and tell a homeowner, do you want to produce 20,000 kilowatt hours of dispatchable, which means you don't need wind or sun, it's whenever the heck you want it. Do you want to produce 20,000 kilowatt hours of dispatchable renewable energy? So that's the three-part goal of Net Zero Plus Canada, is to speak the language, understand where we need to go, and then count every kilowatt hour.
Yeah, and I think that's also just really important. Like, speaking the right language applies to like everything in life, right? Bringing it back to simplicity, but making things more efficient. I think I can see it making a huge difference. And your story here on today's podcast, for everybody that was able to listen, it's just really awesome to be able to see somebody go through their entire life and have that kind of resilient approach. And it seems as though good things come out of having that approach and that mindset. So your story here today, I'm sure, has inspired a lot of people.
I appreciate the opportunity, and thank you for letting me blither at the mouth for a while.